Both the Sony WH-1000XM6s and the Sony ULT Wear are great ANC headphones to consider. The Sony WH-1000XM6s hands down have the best active noise cancellation, making them the best ANC headphones to travel with, and the Sony ULT Wear are a solid pair of mid-tier ANC headphones, which I honestly feel you can't go wrong with. However, the Sony WH-1000XM6s are a lot more premium than the ULT Wear, so today we're going to compare these two headphones and let's see which one's right for you. Regarding pricing, this is going to be a deciding factor for a lot of people, and I don't blame you. The Sony WH-1000XM6s have a retail price of $450, which is up there, whereas the ULT Wear have a retail price of $200. Not bad at all. Now, I do expect both of these headphones to go on sale on a regular basis, so if you want to pick either of these two headphones up, they'll be linked down below. Or you can always press on the YouTube shopping button, and if you want to further support the channel, then you can always pick up some merch. So first, there's the case. Thankfully, the Sony WH-1000XM6s have a collapsible design to them again, so these headphones have a small case again, similar to the ULT Wear's case. And overall, I like both of these cases. They're both hard shell, so they're going to keep your headphones well protected, even if they're in a cramped backpack, and they're both decently small and thin. However, the XM6's cases has this new magnetic latch, making it super easy to open and close this case, and this case is still super secure. However, if you're one of those crazy people that likes to hang their headphones from their backpack, personally, I recommend that you use a case with a zipper, because the magnetic latch on the XM6's cases just makes it super easy for someone to steal your headphones, because it's super easy for someone to just get in and out. But nonetheless, both of these cases are great, but personally, I do prefer the XM6's case because of the magnetic latch. But with the cases out of the way, let's talk about the headphones themselves. Now, the ear cups on both of these headphones pivot and swivel a lot, which is great for comfort. However, the headband on the XM6s glides in and out, but personally, I do prefer the ULT Wear's headband here because it clicks. And I prefer when my headbands click because I know that 7 clicks out, that's my fit. Whereas with gliding headbands, I always have to guess and readjust. But if we move up the headband, you'll notice that the XM6's headband is a little wider than the XM5's headband, which again is good for comfort. Whereas with the ULT Wears, these have a more standard headband, and again, I do prefer the ULT Wear's headband here because it does have more padding than the XM6's headband. So I do feel the ULT Wear's headband is a little more comfortable than the XM6's. And then there's the leatherette on these headphones. Now, both of these leatherettes feel good, but they are different. Now, the leatherette on the ULT Wear feels a little more traditional again because it has a slight grain to it. Whereas with the XM6's, this leatherette feels a little more like silicone, but with less friction. Overall, both of these headphones are very well built and they feel very premium. However, Sony's headphones do have a bit of a reputation on them for being a little more on the fragile side, specifically at the hinges. And it looks like Sony is tackling this issue head on with the Sony WH-1000XM6s because these headphones now have a bit of metal on their hinges. Now, I've never had any issues with my Sony headphones breaking on me, but regardless, it does look like Sony is trying to fix this. Now, when it comes to fit, both of these headphones fit well, but they do fit a little differently. Now, when it comes to clamping force, both of these headphones have a neutral amount of clamping force, but more importantly, both of these headphones are Big Hat approved, and even if you like to wear hats, they both will have you covered. However, the ULT Wears are a little looser than the XM6s. Both of these headphones are also relatively lightweight, weighing in at 254 grams, so with both of these headphones, you're not going to notice them all that much when you're walking around with them on, and they're both very easy to forget that you're wearing them, whether you're sitting at your desk or while you're on an airplane. But the earpads on these headphones are very different. Now, the earpads on the Sony XM6s are going to be able to fit people with average size ears just fine. However, the ULT Wear's earpads are a lot more spacious by comparison. Now, they aren't as spacious as the earpads found on, let's say, the Bose QC headphones, but these are going to do a better job of accommodating larger ears or ears that stick out more, a lot better than the earpads found on the Sony 1000XM6s. Now, the XM6s fit my average size ears just fine, but I still prefer and appreciate the more spacious earpads on the ULT Wear. However, since the earpads on the ULT Wear have more padding in them than the earpads on the XM6s, the ULT Wear can heat up a little faster than the XM6's earpads. But overall, both of these headphones fit well, but personally, I do prefer the Sony ULT Wear because they have a more spacious earpads and their headband has more padding. But looks-wise, I think the Sony 1000XM6s look much sleeker and more low profile than the ULT Wear. And build quality-wise, both of these headphones feel good, but the Sony 1000XM6s might be a little more durable than the ULT Wear thanks to their metal reinforced hinges. But now let's talk about tech specs. When it comes to battery life, both of these headphones have an advertised battery life of 30 hours with their ANC turned on. But with their ANC turned off, the XM6s can go for as long as 40 hours, whereas the ULT Wear can go for as long as 50 hours. Nonetheless, both of these headphones have above average battery lives on them, making them great options for traveling. And when it comes to charging these headphones, both of these headphones charge via a USB-C port as they should. However, with the XM6s, you can also use these headphones while they're charging at the same time, which is actually a very big deal if you plan on using these headphones as a gaming headset as well. Now, you can't use the USB-C port on either of these two headphones as a wired connection, but they both do have an audio jack and they both come included with an audio cable, and you can also use both of these headphones passively, which again is great for flying or even for content creation. And I make a big deal about these headphones having an audio jack and coming included with an audio cable because there are some headphones out there that either don't have an audio jack or their audio cable is sold separately. And when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, both of these headphones can be connected to any two Bluetooth devices at the same time regardless of ecosystem, which is great if you're a power user because you can easily hot swap from one device to another, and latency is not an issue for either of these two headphones, so you can use them to watch videos with on your phone. And when it comes to audio codecs, both of these headphones have support for SBC, AAC, and LDAC, which is Sony's own in-house high-res audio codec. Just keep in mind that if you do want to use LDAC, you do have to be an Android user because iPhones top out at AAC, and if you do use LDAC, that is going to take an additional toll on the battery life because with the XM6s, their battery life is going to go from 30 hours of playback time to 26 hours of playback time if you're using LDAC and you have their ANC turned on. But wait, if you want to further support the channel, then check out our affiliate partner, Manscaped. Manscaped has a trimmer for any of your grooming needs. First off, there's the Handyman, which is a compact face shaver. There's the upgraded Lawnmower 4.0 Pro, which charges via a USB-C port and it still has wireless charging, but more importantly, it has a new upgraded and stronger motor. There's also the Lawnmower 5.0, which also has the same great upgraded motor, plus it also comes included with a foil if you want to get a skin-tight shave. There's also the Dome Shaver Pro, which has 5 double-track blade heads. It's easy to clean and it also charges via a USB-C port, or it also has wireless charging. And finally, there's the Chairman Pro, which is my personal favorite. It not only feels super premium, but it also has 2 interchangeable heads, so either you can get a skin-tight shave or you can leave the right amount of stubble. No matter your needs, Manscaped has a shaver for you, so check out Manscaped in the link down below. But now let's talk about actually listening to music with these headphones. Now, since these are both Sony headphones, they sound very similar, but they do have their nuanced differences. Now, both of these headphones have equally as good instrument separation and openness. And when the ULT Wear are playing with their ULT feature turned off, they sound very similar to the XM6s, but the XM6s do bring out the vocals a little more. But what's really different on these headphones is the bass. With the Sony 1000XM6s, the bass on these headphones is very subdued. You do get a little bit of kick out of them, especially at the higher end of the bass, but these headphones don't kick as much or resonate as much as, let's say, the Sony 1000XM4s. So with the Sony 1000XM6s, these headphones sound good, but they're missing a little bit of fun. Whereas with the ULT Wear, these headphones are more fun to listen to because these headphones have more kick in their bass. Specifically, if you were to use the ULT Wear while in ULT 1, these headphones are going to sound just as they would while in their normal mode, but you're going to feel a decent amount of kick in their bass when it comes in. But more importantly, the balance and instrument separation is still there. Now, the ULT Wear also have an ULT 2 mode, but personally, I don't like to use this mode because this is where these headphones start to sound a little too warm and shallow, and the bass gets a little overpowering, and the bass changes from a kick to a resonance. Now, you can always go in and adjust the EQ on the bass on the Sony 1000XM6s, but personally, I don't like to use a custom EQ on the XM6s because I feel that they lose some of their instrument separation. So overall, the Sony 1000XM6s sound good because they have a really good instrument separation. They sound very open and the vocals are very prominent on these headphones. But since the bass on these headphones is very subdued, these headphones aren't as much fun to listen to as with the Sony ULT Wear. With the ULT Wear, if you have them set to ULT 1, they're going to sound as open and as balanced as the Sony 1000XM6s, but the bass on these headphones is going to deliver more kick, which is going to lead to a more fun experience. But when it comes to the MIDI controls on these headphones, both of these headphones have full-on touchpads, and these touchpads are easy enough to use. You can tap to play or pause your music, you swipe front or back to skip through your music, and you can swipe up or down to adjust your volume. And a pro tip, if you swipe up and hold, you can continuously raise the volume on either of these two headphones. Overall, both of these touchpads are good, but I know some people just still prefer their physical buttons. Also, both of these headphones have built-in wear sensors, so they'll both automatically play or pause your music when you put them on or when you take them off. However, I have noticed that the wear sensors on the XM6s are faster to react than the wear sensors found on the ULT Wear, but I don't think that's a big deal. Nonetheless, if you want, you can also turn off these wear sensors like I do. However, something the XM6s has over the ULT Wear is that they have gesture controls, so you can nod to accept or reject phone calls, and they even have their own built-in voice assistant, so you can say things like, "Hey, headphones, noise cancellation on," but personally, I don't use either of these two features either. But now let's talk about the active noise cancellation on these headphones. For the last few years, the Sony 1000XM5s have been the best headphones to travel with because they blocked out the most amount of noise. And thanks to their built-in atmospheric pressure sensors, both the Sony 1000XM5s and the Sony 1000XM4s blocked out the most noise while at cruising altitude. At cruising altitude, even the Sony 1000XM4s are able to block out noticeably more noise than both the Bose QC Ultra and the Bose QC headphones. But now we have the Sony 1000XM6s, and these continue to block out a ton of noise, and they block out noticeably more noise than the Sony 1000XM5s as well. Now, the Sony ULT Wear block out an adequate amount of noise for a pair of mid-tier ANC headphones, but obviously these aren't going to block out as much noise as the Sony 1000XM6s. And since they don't have atmospheric pressure sensors, they aren't going to be able to adjust their active noise cancellation at cruising altitude like the XM6s or XM5s or XM4s can. But more importantly, the ULT Wear are able to block out way more noise than, let's say, the Beats Studio Pro, which aren't even all that pro to begin with. But so that you can see for yourself, we're going to go ahead and jump into an ANC test. So like we have just seen, obviously the Sony 1000XM6s are able to block out way more noise than the ULT Wear. This is to be expected. The ULT Wear block out an adequate amount of noise for a pair of mid-tier ANC headphones, and they're going to be great for use while on your bus ride commute to work, or if you're trying to study in your school's cafeteria. But with the Sony 1000XM6s, these are able to just block out way more noise. They have less of a high-pitched hum to them while blocking out constant low-frequency sounds like either road noise or a jet engine, and they also do a much more effective job of blocking out people's voices, even higher-pitched ones. But what really makes the XM6s special is just like the XM5s and XM4s, they also have built-in atmospheric pressure sensors, and they are constantly calibrating themselves. And while at cruising altitude, both the XM5s and XM4s are able to block out way more noise than, let's say, the Bose QC Ultra, Bose QC headphones, AirPod Max, or Sennheiser Momentum 4s. So it's also safe to assume that the XM6s are going to block out a lot of noise while flying as well. And rest assured, we will be putting out a separate video on that soon. But overall, the Sony 1000XM6s sound very similar to the ULT Wear, but I actually prefer to listen to music with the ULT Wear because they have a lot more kick in their bass. But you can't deny that the Sony 1000XM6s block out way more noise than the Sony ULT Wear, and thanks to their atmospheric pressure sensors, the Sony 1000XM6s are poised to be the best ANC headphones to fly with because they should block out the most amount of noise while at cruising altitude. But then there's the ambient mode on these headphones. Now, the ambient mode on both of these headphones is good, and you can adjust how much noise they let in. But with the XM6s, this ambient mode sounds more natural, and you can also set them to automatically adjust themselves. But personally, I just use these headphones with their ambient mode set to max. But more importantly, even though the ambient mode on the XM6s sounds better than the ambient mode on the ULT Wear, the XM6s don't block out sudden loud sounds like this, and this is your major headphone warning. So like we have just seen, the XM6s, these just let in everything. And I feel that Sony really needs to fix this through a firmware update because the ULT Wears have a proper active ambient mode like this. So like you may have just seen, when the ULT Wears detected that loud siren, they turned off their ambient mode, and when that siren stopped, they went back to normal. And I feel that this is very important, especially if you're walking around in the city. And I feel that if the mid-tier ULT Wears are able to get this right, then the more premium Sony 1000XM6s should be able to get this right as well. But something that is exclusive to the Sony 1000XM6s is Speak to Chat, which works like this. Hello there. So this is Speak to Chat. Basically, when you start talking, these headphones will automatically lower the volume of your music, and they'll automatically pump in all of the ambient sound around you so that you can quickly talk to someone without even to have to touch these headphones themselves. Now, these headphones will stay in this state for a preset determined amount of time, or you can always adjust that through their app, or you can always manually cancel Speak to Chat by double tapping on the touchpad like this. But personally, I'm not a very big fan of Speak to Chat because it's very easy to accidentally activate it. If you're talking to yourself even very quietly, that can activate it. If you're singing along to your music, that can activate it. If you start laughing, that can activate it. And on rare occasions, loud enough outside sounds can activate it as well. So that's why I don't use it. Personally, I still prefer to use quick attention, which can be found on both of these headphones because it's a lot more intentional. So when you fully cover the touchpad on either of these two headphones, they're going to automatically lower the volume of your music and pump in all of the ambient sound around you like this. And then when you let go, the headphones will go back to normal again. Now, like I said, I prefer quick attention because it's a lot more intentional, and this feature is extremely useful, especially when you're flying with these headphones. But I still feel that Sony should change it so that when you have the touchpad covered for longer than, let's say, 5 seconds, they should lock themselves in this state so that you can let go. Because truthfully, doing this does get awkward and it does get a little uncomfortable after a while. And again, this is something that I feel that Sony can fix through a firmware update. But finally, here's the microphone test. And unfortunately, both of these microphones need work because the mic on the Sony WH-1000XM6 is actually pretty good. Now, the microphone on both of these headphones sounds good enough to take phone calls with while in a quiet room. But the problem is both of these microphones really struggle to block out noise pollution, because right now you can hear a decent amount of road noise and there's a decent amount of interference on my voice. Whereas with the Sony WH-1000XM6, these are able to deal with this noise pollution much better. Because for comparison's sake, if we were to switch over to my lapel microphone, you're going to clearly hear all of this road noise. But if we were to switch back over to the Sony WH-1000XM6, it is severely reduced. And then there are the ULT Wear, and these have even more road noise in the background and more interference going on with my voice than the Sony WH-1000XM6s. And when it comes to blocking out chatter, it's the same thing. There is a lot of noise pollution and a lot of interference going on with my voice. And it's the same thing with the Sony 1000XM6s. There is a lot of noise pollution and a lot of interference on the voice. So it's very hard to take phone calls with these headphones unless you're in a quiet room. But then there are the Sony 1000XM5s, and these are able to better deal with all of this noise pollution. Because again, if we were to switch over to my lapel microphone, you're going to clearly hear all of this chatter. But if we were to switch back over to the Sony 1000XM5s, it is reduced. So when the Sony 1000XM5s came out, I thought that Sony was improving their microphones. But now both the ULT Wear and Sony XM6s have worse performing microphones than the XM5s, and both of these headphones are newer than the Sony 1000XM5s. So I really hope that Sony is able to fix this through a firmware. But with all that being said, if you're trying to choose between the Sony 1000XM6s and the Sony ULT Wear, both of these headphones are great, but with the Sony 1000XM6s, you are going to be getting the best active noise cancellation out there, and thanks to their atmospheric pressure sensors, the Sony 1000XM6s are the best ANC headphones to fly with, because you're going to be able to block out the most amount of noise while at cruising altitude. I also think that the Sony 1000XM6s look better than the ULT Wear, and I also prefer their new case with their new magnetic latch. But with the Sony ULT Wear, first off, these headphones are significantly more affordable than the Sony 1000XM6s. Now, no, they don't block out as much noise as the Sony 1000XM6s, but I do prefer how these sound because they sound more fun because they have a more kick in their bass. And the Sony ULT Wear are more comfortable than the XM6s because of their more spacious ear cups, but something that I do feel that Sony needs to fix on both of these headphones are their microphones for phone calls. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.